Hi, everybody. I am so excited about this month's call. And as I just told Katie, I feel a little bit selfish. I tend to think of everyone else first. But when it comes to conversations with Katie, she knows I could talk to her for hours. And I am so excited to introduce those of you that don't know her. She is really an amazing resource for me when it comes to leadership. I had the honor of getting to know Katie as a client, and then she became a friend, and now I love everything that she does. She wrote this first great book called Sticky Note Leadership, and what I love about it is it's small. Look how thin that is. Everybody should and can read this, and yet it's a powerful message. And her new book, which is, I think she's taken the world by storm right now with this new book. And it's really helping to develop female leadership within the churches, which is pretty awesome. And I loved a lot of the messaging in that book because it's not just for churches, right? We all should be developing female leadership. So Katie, anything you'd like to add to that? She's got a great son. She's a wife and obviously a mother and an amazing daughter. Is there anything you'd like to throw into that?
No, I'm excited to be here, and I always love chatting with you just as much. So I know we're going to have a great time today.
Absolutely. So today's topic is about leadership, and I think it's something that no matter what your business is, that it's all about people. And when I talk to anybody in any industry, when I talk to them about their challenges in their business, it all comes back to people. And so I think it's something that no matter what your business is, or maybe you don't even have a business because you're volunteering, that's a leadership opportunity. You're raising children, oh my gosh, that's the best leadership opportunity ever, right? So one of the things that I've gotten a lot of questions, and one of the questions I got, Katie, was what do great leaders do well? What can we learn from those great leaders?
Well, that is a really great question. And of course, the answer is humongous. But I think from my viewpoint, one of the sort of unnoticed but foundational things for leaders that do a great job with other people is they do a great job leading themselves first. So we are like the first and hardest person to lead, right? Because we can convince ourselves of anything. We can come up with all sorts of excuses. We can justify our behavior. And so if we don't even want to follow our own self, then it's really hard for other people to want to follow us also. And so those sort of inner developmental pieces of managing our own time, making sure we're controlling and in tune with our own emotions and know how to use them, making sure we have our own disciplines in place, that we are becoming the person we want to be, and at the same time leading ourselves in a way that we have grace for ourselves, we can make mistakes, we can learn lessons, we're willing to take risk and make mistakes and learn from them. All of those things we practice on ourselves first, and that overflows in what we are able to offer to other people as we lead them. I see a lot of either young leaders or maybe leaders that are having a hard time sort of breaking through to the next level, or they're churning through staff, or they're just never satisfied with anyone who works for them and all these people and blah, blah. Almost always I can look at the way they lead themselves and they've got some real blind spots. And so if you find yourself frustrated continually with the people around you, chances are the thing that's not working well with them is also not working well in just leading yourself. And so if you can begin, you don't have to wait to master yourself to lead other people, but as you can begin to kind of realize it's more of a principle or a core issue in how I'm living than in what those people are doing, it changes the dynamic and it gives you 100% control back, because we are fully in control of our own thoughts, our own behaviors, our own actions. It can sometimes feel like people make us do things, but at the end of the day, we own our own selves, but we don't own other people. And a lot of times when we're stressed or frustrated, what ends up happening is that we switch those two things. We spend a lot of time trying to control other people, and we actually forfeit control of our own selves. So we overeat, we overspend, we make choices that actually harm us instead of owning our own stuff and giving other people the freedom to own their own stuff.
Interesting. It's funny. I had a business coach one time that said, you're doing this to your own self, right? Just own it and acknowledge it. Because I tend to think I can solve every issue all at once. Like, I'm not an incremental person. I think I'm going to turn every system upside down at one time. And just acknowledging that, okay, I chose this, right? I'm a victor, not a victim in that choice. And maybe next time that a different choice should have been made. However, it was a choice I made, right? I do have control over it. And I think that when you do that, and especially as big picture people, we think that we can do everything, right? And learning, for me, that's my lesson, is that, okay, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to delegate. It's okay to slow down a little, right? And then I'm not so frustrated with others, because most people don't want to turn their world upside down to make it better all the time, right?
Right. Well, and it's not only okay to do that, it's actually necessary. The higher you go in leadership, the more those things are the skill sets that are required. So I talk to a lot of leaders who get frustrated with their teams because, like, oh gosh, the people I hired in the beginning of my company aren't really doing what I need them to do now. And do I get new people? Do I try and train them? But the reality is we have that same issue on ourselves. Who we were when we started something is not who our company needs later. And so that, again, it comes back to, am I willing to grow into what my company needs me to be, what my team needs me to be? And the challenging thing is, especially for those of us who are more on the leadership side, we're entrepreneurs, we're starters, we're big vision people, we're conquer the hill, we're going to take everything. And we see things, especially visionary leaders, we see it all finished. And so we're like, that looks awesome. Let's get there as fast as possible, right? But the problem is life doesn't work that way, and not everyone works. And the bigger and more complex your company gets, or your team or your organization, the harder it is to make all of those things happen at one time. But the challenge for us as we grow ourselves is that in the early stages of leadership, going for it, pushing hard, working the extra hours, being overly efficient, seeing the vision and like dogmatically going after it. That's actually what accelerates your capacity, your ability, your promotion, your success in the early stages of leadership. But there is a mid-level point. I call it the mid-level leadership crisis. It's just like a midlife crisis. So there's this mid-level point where you actually have to flip and start functioning differently if you want to go. Because otherwise you go up and you peak at mid-level and then you drop. That's why a lot of entrepreneurial businesses never make it past their, optimum growth point, or they're always hitting a lid, or their metrics go up and down. It's because there's this barrier to the top, but it really mostly has to do with themselves, because that high achieving, type A, or as my husband would call me, like a double A personality, like all those things drive you to this point. But the thing that goes from here to here is actually reflection, long range planning, development of people. They're not incremental, but it is slower investments. And so it's the difference between like closing a deal and having a retirement account. So you close the deal early, but at some point you start saving for retirement, because that's the thing that grows ongoing. And that little flip right there is really hard, because we move from high production, check a bunch of things off the list, put the deposit in, prove ourselves to other people and even our own selves. And we go to these things that have longer term payoff. We don't get as much applause. Leadership development sounds awesome, but it really means a whole bunch of like courageous conversations where people don't like you very much because you're challenging them to be better. And so you have all these longer term investments that really become their own flywheel at higher levels of leadership. And that's where companies go from good to great. But that in between flip requires a lot of us as individual leaders.